The Galactic Alliance Academy stood at the heart of the capital station, orbiting a golden star. It was a place where hundreds of alien species studied together. The building was huge and beautiful, tall silver towers, glowing bridges, and floating platforms that shimmered in blue light. Students from peaceful worlds came here to learn science, diplomacy, and survival training. But that year, something unusual happened. 2 students joined the academy who would change everything. One was a hunter from the planet Graltor, and the other, a human from Earth known across the stars as a Deathworlder. The day classes began, the academy buzzed with excitement. Students of many shapes and colors filled the halls, some with feathers, some with scales, some floating on soft energy wings. Their voices echoed through the corridors as they talked about the new arrivals. "Did you hear? A Graltor hunter has joined this semester," said a young Terrene student, his antennae twitching. "Yes, they say he once hunted beasts 3 times his size," replied another. "But what about the human?" a third asked softly. "A real Deathworlder?" The others went silent. Even in a galaxy full of strange species, humans were mysterious. Stories said their homeworld was one of the most dangerous planets ever discovered, filled with storms, wild animals, and natural disasters that could destroy entire cities. Yet humans survived, and not only survived, they thrived. Inside classroom 9A, Professor Alveth, a tall, crystal-skinned being, adjusted her energy lens. She was calm and wise, respected by every student. Today she wanted to make a special introduction. When the class gathered, the doors slid open with a soft hum. The first to enter was tall and strong, his skin patterned like bronze scales. His glowing eyes moved like those of a predator scanning its prey. A faint scar ran across his cheek, a mark of survival. He was Rakar of Graltor, one of the youngest to earn the title of hunter on his planet. The students whispered in awe. "He looks dangerous." "Of course. He's a hunter." Rakar walked to the center of the class and crossed his arms. "I am Rakar, son of Torak," he said in a deep voice. "I come to study the strategies of other species, but I will also prove the strength of my kind." Before anyone could respond, the door slid open again. This time the figure who entered looked completely ordinary. He was of average height, wearing a simple academy uniform, brown hair a little messy, and eyes that showed quiet confidence. He didn't glow, didn't have scales or wings. He looked almost plain. But when he stepped in, Rakar's predator eyes focused sharply on him. The hunter sensed something he could not explain. The professor smiled. "And this," she said, "is Cadet Elias Ward from planet Earth. He represents the human species, recently joined under the Alliance Exchange Program." A few students exchanged confused looks. "That's a Deathworld species, right?" whispered one softly. "Yes," said another, "but he doesn't look dangerous," Rakar smirked. "That is a human?" "I expected someone taller." Elias only smiled politely. "And I expected hunters to be friendlier." A quiet laugh ran through the class. Even Professor Alveth smiled faintly. "Good," she said. "I see you two will get along just fine. Now take your seats." As the lesson began, Elias sat at the back of the room watching everything with calm focus. The screens around the room showed planetary maps, oxygen levels, and survival patterns across different worlds. Professor Alveth spoke about adaptive evolution, explaining how species developed special traits to survive their homeworlds. The students proudly shared stories about their planets, how they adapted to cold, heat, or gravity. When the professor asked about Earth, Elias raised his hand slowly. "Our world is not the biggest or strongest," he said, "but it changes a lot. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes freezing. Sometimes there are storms, sometimes calm days. We learn to live with all of it." The class looked puzzled. Rakar tilted his head. "So you just survive?" Elias nodded. "We don't just survive. We build, we explore. We learn from everything that tries to kill us." The words hung in the air. Something about the way he said it made even Rakar stop smiling. Professor Alveth looked thoughtful. "That," she said softly, "is what makes Deathworlders interesting." During break, groups of students gathered around Rakar, asking him questions about his hunts. He told them proudly about the sandworms of Graltor, creatures with teeth longer than a man's arm. He had hunted one when he was just a youth. Nearby, Elias sat alone at a table reading from a datapad. A few students approached him, curious. "Human, said a winged creature named Valen. "Is it true that your planet's animals attack you?" Elias smiled slightly. "Sometimes. We've learned to live with them. And you don't use weapons all the time?" "Only when we must. Most of the time we use our minds." Valen looked amazed. "You must be very brave." Elias shook his head. "Not brave. Just used to danger." From across the room, Rakar watched silently. The human didn't look strong, but his calmness felt unnatural. Hunters knew how to sense fear, and Rakar couldn't feel any from him. Later that day, their group was called to the training hall for orientation. The hall was large, filled with equipment for strength and reflex practice. The instructor, a tall insectoid named Sarax, explained the academy rules. "We train together. We learn together. No fighting outside the test zones. Understood?" Everyone nodded. Then Sarax decided to test reflexes with a simple exercise, catching a moving drone that flew randomly at high speed. One by one, students tried. Most failed. The drone was too fast, too sharp in its turns. When Rakar's turn came, he crouched low, muscles tense, eyes fixed. The drone shot out. He moved like lightning, snatching it from the air with one clawed hand. The class clapped and cheered. Then Sarax looked at Elias. "Your turn, human." Elias stood quietly. The drone reset and shot forward. For a second, it looked like he wouldn't react in time. But then his hand moved, not fast, but precise. He caught the drone with a calm grip. The crowd went silent. Rakar frowned. "You moved late," he said. "How did you catch it?" Elias shrugged. "I watched its pattern. It wasn't that random." The instructor looked impressed. "Excellent observation, Cadet Ward. It wasn't just luck." Elias had seen something others didn't. Tiny repetitions in the drone's motion. He didn't fight speed with speed. He used logic. That moment changed how many students looked at him. The plain-looking human from the Deathworld had something powerful. Patience and focus. That night, as lights dimmed across the academy, Rakar couldn't sleep. He stood by the window of his dorm, looking out at the stars. He remembered the human's calm voice, his steady eyes. No fear, no pride, just quiet certainty. It reminded him of old hunters from his tribe, the ones who faced beasts not with anger but with understanding. "Strange creature," Rakar murmured. "He does not act like prey, nor predator." In another wing of the building, Elias sat on his bed, looking out the same stars. He felt the vastness of the galaxy pressing around him. Earth was far away, but he didn't feel small. He smiled softly to himself. "A new world," he whispered. "Let's see what it teaches me." The next morning, the academy was alive again with excitement. The first official survival simulation was about to begin. Professor Alveth gathered the students near the simulation dome, a massive area that could create any environment from deserts to oceans to alien jungles. "This week," she announced, "you will face endurance tests. You will experience what it means to adapt. You will learn what makes your species unique." Rakar grinned confidently. Finally, a real challenge. Elias just adjusted his gear quietly. None of the students noticed the faint smile on the professor's face. She had seen many brave species come and go, but something about the calm human told her this class was going to witness something unforgettable. As the dome doors opened and bright artificial sunlight poured in, Rakar and Elias stepped forward side by side, two beings from worlds of danger, two survivors from opposite ends of the galaxy. The hunter and the Deathworlder had entered the same class, and soon everyone would learn what it truly meant to be human. The morning sun inside the simulation dome rose like a glowing orb, painting the training field in gold and red. The environment control systems were working perfectly, creating a realistic landscape that stretched far into the distance. The ground was made of reddish sand, broken by rocks and low ridges. Heat shimmered in the air and gravity had been increased to make movement harder. This was the endurance test, the first real challenge of the semester. Professor Alveth stood on the observation platform with her assistant, looking down at the students gathering below. "They will learn more about themselves today than any lecture could ever teach," she said quietly. Her assistant nodded. "Even the hunter?" "Especially the hunter," Alveth replied. Rakar, the proud Graltor hunter, stretched his limbs, his muscles shifting beneath his bronze scales. He looked excited. "Finally, a real test," he said. "My blood sings for this." He turned his sharp eyes toward the human standing nearby. Elias Ward was checking his gear calmly. No excitement, no fear. Just focus, Raykar smirked. You think you can match me, human? Elias looked up. It's not about matching. It's about finishing. Raykar laughed, showing his sharp teeth. We'll see who finishes first. The instructor Sarax, with his tall insectoid frame and glowing eyes, raised a clawed hand. You must run across the field, he said, pointing toward a distant cliff that shimmered in the heat. 2 kilometers through simulated high gravity. There are no shortcuts. Your endurance will be measured. No rest until you reach the cliff. The students lined up. There were 10 of them, each from different species, each confident in their own strengths. A light flashed overhead. Begin! The ground vibrated as the students started running. Dust rose behind them like smoke. At first, Raykar surged ahead. His powerful legs carried him over rocks with ease. The scales on his body reflected sunlight, and his tail helped him balance perfectly. He moved like a predator chasing invisible prey. Other students followed behind, panting under the heavy gravity. Some stumbled, others slowed. Elias started slower than everyone. His pace was steady, measured, not showing off. His boots pressed deep into the sand as the weight of the simulated gravity tried to pull him down. The air was hot and dry. The heat stung the skin. Sweat formed quickly. Halfway through, one of the smaller students, a thin creature from planet Valora, fell to his knees. I can't, he gasped. Raykar passed him without a second glance. But Elias stopped for a moment, offering his water bottle. Drink, Elias said simply. Then keep moving. The Valoran looked up in surprise, took a sip, and nodded gratefully. Elias didn't wait for thanks. He started running again. Minutes passed. The temperature rose higher. Even Raykar began to feel the pull of the gravity on his legs. His breathing grew heavy. He looked back, and to his surprise, the human was still behind him, not far, running with the same calm rhythm. How can he still move like that? Raykar thought, wiping the sweat from his brow. The human's face showed effort, but no panic. His breathing was controlled. Step after step, he just kept going. Soon Raykar's muscles began to ache. He had trained for years on his harsh homeworld, but this gravity was heavier than anything he had felt before. He looked forward, the cliff still looked far away. Up in the observation deck, Professor Alveth watched closely. Look at the human, she said. He isn't rushing. He's conserving energy. Efficient. Her assistant adjusted the holographic screen.
His heart rate is steady.
Impressive for a Deathworlder. The hunter's rate is rising fast. Alveth smiled faintly. Raykar fights the challenge. Elias flows with it. 2 very different minds. Back on the ground, several students had stopped completely, sitting on the rocks, breathing hard. Raykar pushed forward, growling low to himself. Just a little more. The sand beneath him shifted. His foot slipped, and he stumbled to one knee. He pushed himself up quickly, embarrassed. Then he heard calm footsteps behind him. Elias passed him without a word. Not fast, just steady. His eyes stayed focused on the horizon. The hunter clenched his jaw. Impossible, he muttered, forcing himself to keep going. They ran side by side for a long while, the sun blazing above, the air dry like fire. Finally, after what felt like hours, the rocky cliff came into sight. The surface glowed faintly under the artificial sunlight. Raykar gathered his last strength and sprinted forward. But his legs were shaking and his vision blurred. The gravity was crushing him now. His pace slowed again. Elias continued at his same rhythm, breathing slow and deep. His boots left even footprints in the sand. When he reached the cliff, the sensors flashed green, the finish line. The professor's voice came through the communicator. Test complete. Endurance levels recorded. Elias stopped, bending slightly as he caught his breath. Sweat ran down his face, but he smiled faintly. Behind him, Raykar reached the finish a few seconds later and dropped to one knee, panting heavily. He looked up at the human. How did you keep running? He asked between breaths. Elias offered his hand to help him up. We learned to keep moving no matter what. Back home, if you stop in a storm, you don't get back up. Raykar stared at him, surprised by the simplicity of his words and the truth in them. When the rest of the class finally reached the finish, many collapsed from exhaustion. The medical drones hovered, giving them cooling mist and hydration packs. Professor Alveth stepped forward to address them all. Her crystal skin sparkled softly under the dome's light. Every species has its strength, she said. But endurance is not just physical, it is mental. Today you learned that. She turned toward Elias. Cadet Ward demonstrated a lesson many forget. True endurance is patience and willpower. Excellent work, human. The class looked at Elias differently now. He hadn't run the fastest, but he had gone farthest with the calmest spirit. Even Ricard, proud and fierce, felt something new, respect. Later, in the Academy's rest hall, the students gathered for dinner. The air was filled with soft chatter and the smell of different alien foods. Ricard sat at a table, rubbing his sore arms. Elias passed by with a food tray and stopped. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Ricard nodded. "You earned it." For a few minutes they ate in silence. Then Ricard spoke. "On Graltor we hunt beasts that can crush trees. We learn to strike fast or die, but you don't fight the world. You let it fight itself," Elias smiled. "Sometimes fighting isn't about claws or teeth. It's about lasting long enough to see the end." Ricard chuckled softly. "You speak like an old hunter." "Maybe," Elias said. "Or maybe your hunters and my people are not so different." That thought made Ricard think deeply. Later that night, in his report to the Academy's database, Professor Alveth wrote her observations. The human cadet's endurance exceeded expectations. He demonstrated control, intelligence, and adaptability under high-gravity conditions. It appears that humans, despite their fragile appearance, possess remarkable mental resilience. The hunter from Graltor, while powerful, relies heavily on instinct. This pairing may prove valuable for both. She paused before adding one more line. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated the Deathworlders. The next morning, the students met again for their second training announcement. The fatigue from yesterday's test still lingered, but excitement buzzed in the air. Serax, the insectoid instructor, clapped his claws together. "Well done, class. Most of you completed the course. Some did better than others." His glowing eyes paused briefly on Elias. "And some surprised us all." Ricard glanced sideways at Elias and smirked. "Enjoy the victory while it lasts, human. The next test is mine." Elias smiled. "We'll see." Serax continued. "Tomorrow's challenge will be the Predator's course, a survival simulation. You will face moving threats in a jungle environment. Your goal is simple: stay alive for 3 hours." The class murmured in surprise. The Predator's course was famous for being difficult. Elias felt no fear. He had survived worse storms on Earth, worse forests filled with danger. A jungle simulation was nothing new. It was just another test. But for Ricard, this was personal. The next test was his world, his strength. This was his chance to prove he was still the true hunter. The rivalry between the hunter and the Deathworlder had begun to shape the entire class, and none of them realized that the next test would not only test their skill, but also reveal what it truly meant to survive. The next day came bright and clear in the Galactic Alliance Academy, but the students of Class 9A were not calm. They stood in front of the simulation dome, whispering nervously. The test today was the most feared one, the Predator's course. Inside the dome, the environment had been changed into a vast jungle full of tall trees, thick vines, and mist that moved like soft smoke. The air was heavy and humid. The sound of distant creatures echoed around them. Even though the animals were not real, their movements were controlled by advanced drones that behaved like living predators. Every student knew this was not just a test of speed or strength. It was a test of instinct, planning, and survival. Professor Alveth stood on the platform with her calm, glowing eyes. "This simulation is designed to teach you how to stay alive when hunted," she explained. "You will be placed in groups of 2. Your goal is to survive for 3 hours without being tagged by the predator drones. Remember, use your mind, not just your muscles." She looked down at her students. "Your pairs have been chosen." As the holographic board flickered, the names appeared. Ricard of Graltor, Elias Ward of Earth. A wave of surprise spread through the group. Raker turned to Elias, a grin crossing his scaled face. "Looks like fate has a sense of humor," he said. Elias only smiled. "Let's make it a good one." When the dome's door opened, the 2 stepped inside. The jungle air hit them like a wall, warm, damp, and filled with buzzing sounds. The ground was soft and uneven. Vines hung low, and the air smelled of wet earth. A loud tone echoed, signaling the start. "3 hours begin now," said the voice of Instructor Serax from above. Ricard crouched low, scanning the surroundings. His predator instincts awakened immediately. His eyes glowed faintly, and his tail swayed behind him. "The scent of danger is close," he muttered. Elias nodded, studying the trees instead of the sounds. They won't attack right away. The program likes to wait until we drop our guard. Rakar raised an eyebrow. You sound like you've hunted before. Elias chuckled. On my world, we're always being hunted, by weather, by nature, by time itself. The first hour was quiet. They moved through the forest carefully, marking paths with small scratches on tree trunks. Elias tied small pieces of leaves to branches to mark directions. Rakar watched, impressed. You plan ahead like a hunter, he said. Habit, Elias replied. Humans learned early that guessing gets you killed. Suddenly, the bushes ahead shook. The sound was low, mechanical, almost like a growl. Rakar whispered, They've found us. Out of the shadows came a drone shaped like a six-legged beast. Its eyes glowed red and metal claws dug into the soil. It moved fast, scanning the area for heat signatures. Rakar raised his spear-like training weapon. I'll take it down. Wait, Elias said quickly. That's not one, it's the scout. If you attack, more will come. Rakar hesitated but lowered his weapon. So what do you suggest, human? We move, quietly. Make them think we're somewhere else. Elias picked up a piece of shiny metal from the ground, a broken drone part from an older test. He threw it far to the left. The sound made the machine turn and run toward the noise. Rakar's eyes widened slightly. Clever trick. Not a trick, Elias said. Distraction. Works on humans too. They moved deeper into the jungle. The air grew darker, the light blocked by thick leaves. Every step had to be careful. The sounds of drones echoed from different directions now. 3, maybe 4 of them. Rakar climbed a tree with ease, scanning from above. They're circling us, he called quietly. We'll be surrounded soon. Elias looked at the ground, thinking fast. Then we need to make them chase something else. He started digging a shallow pit using a broken branch. Rakar jumped down beside him. You dig while hunted? It's called preparation, Elias said simply. He placed a few long vines over the hole, hiding it. Then he broke a branch and rubbed it with his scent before placing it near the trap. Minutes later, one of the drones entered the clearing. Its sensors locked onto the branch, reading Elias's scent. It rushed forward and fell straight into the pit. Rakar burst out laughing, a deep rumbling sound. You trapped it. Elias smiled. On Earth, traps keep you alive longer than claws. They continued moving. Each time they heard a drone, Elias found a way to mislead it, creating noise using reflections or masking their heat signatures with wet leaves. Rakar followed, slowly realizing that survival was not always about direct strength. You think differently, Rakar admitted, as they rested for a moment near a fallen tree. Elias took a sip of water. Humans had to. We're small compared to the predators on our planet, but we learned how to make the world work for us. Rakar tilted his head. We Greltor learn by fighting. You humans learn by adapting. Elias smiled. Maybe both are needed. The final hour began and the simulation increased in difficulty. The drones became faster and smarter, working together like a pack. The jungle shook with their movement. Rakar growled softly. They're coming in from 3 sides. Elias looked around. Then we go where they don't expect us, up. He started climbing a massive tree whose branches reached high into the canopy. Rakar followed, though the idea felt strange. Hunters fought on the ground, not in the trees. When the drones arrived, they scanned the area, but their sensors failed to detect the 2 hidden figures above. The machines moved past them, confused. Rakar looked down and whispered, You outsmarted them. Elias whispered back, Sometimes you win by not fighting. For a few moments, they stayed silent among the leaves, listening to the jungle breathe. The tension faded slightly, replaced by a quiet respect between the two. Suddenly, a louder sound echoed, a heavy metallic roar. From the far side of the forest, the Alpha drone appeared. It was twice as big as the others, its armor shining dark red. It was the final test predator, programmed to hunt by sound, motion, and even emotion sensors. Elias sighed. Of course there's a boss level, Rakar grinned. Finally something worthy. The drone fired a net of light upward, catching the edge of the tree. Elias and Rakar jumped down just in time, landing hard but safe. The Alpha turned toward them, scanning for targets. Split up, Elias shouted. Make it choose. Rakar charged left, roaring to draw attention. The drone turned toward him, firing a stun beam that narrowly missed. Elias ran behind, searching for an opening. He noticed the creature's power core glowing faintly beneath its armor. He picked up a sharp branch and wrapped it with his power cell wire. The makeshift spear sparked faintly. Rakar was tiring. "Human, do something!" Elias took aim, waited for the right second, and threw the spear. It hit the glowing section perfectly. Sparks exploded, and the Alpha shut down with a loud thud. Silence filled the jungle once again. When the simulation ended, the jungle faded into light. The floor turned smooth and metallic again. The other students were already outside watching the screens as Elias and Rakar stood over the fallen Alpha drone. The dome doors opened and the two stepped out. Rakar looked at Elias, still breathing hard. "You fought without weapons. You used what you found. You made the jungle your ally." Elias shrugged. "Back home, the jungle doesn't care who you are. You either learn fast or become part of it." Professor Alveth smiled proudly. "Both of you performed exceptionally." But Elias Ward demonstrated something very important: strategy. The galaxy must understand that strength is not only in the claws, but in the mind. The other students clapped, some with amazement, others with disbelief. Later, when the excitement faded, Rakar found Elias sitting by the academy garden. The stars above shimmered like silver dust. Rakar sat beside him. "You know," he said, "when I first saw you, I thought you were weak. Now I see you are dangerous in a way I never imagined." Elias chuckled softly. "Humans are full of surprises." Rakar looked at the stars. "You could teach many hunters how to think like that. You don't fight nature, you understand it." Elias nodded. "Maybe that's how we survive our death world." They sat in silence, two beings from opposite worlds, both learning that survival was not just about power, but about understanding the hunt itself. Professor Alveth, watching the recording later, made another note in her report. "The human's methods reveal the difference between instinct and intelligence. The hunter uses strength. The human uses the world around him. Together they could redefine survival training." She smiled quietly. The galaxy was finally beginning to see what made humans special, not their weapons, not their power, but their adaptability. And as the next challenge awaited, both Rakar and Elias knew something important had begun. It was no longer just a test. It was the start of a friendship between Predator and Deathworlder, one that would soon face something far more dangerous than any simulation. The day after the Predator's course, the students of Class 9A were buzzing with excitement. The previous day's test had been intense, and everyone was still talking about how the human cadet, Elias Ward, had outsmarted the jungle simulation. Rakar, the proud Graltor hunter, was still reflecting on the lesson. Humans, he realized, were not just prey, they were cunning, adaptable, and unpredictable. For the first time, he felt a mixture of respect and curiosity for someone from another species. But the Academy had something entirely different in store that day, a real crisis. Inside the simulation dome, the students gathered, unaware of the danger awaiting them. The instructors had planned a more advanced session, designed to simulate combat with high-speed drones. The class entered the dome expecting a controlled test as usual. The air inside was calm, almost peaceful, filled with the scent of synthetic grass and trees. The lights reflected off metallic walls, and a low hum of machinery could be heard in the distance. "Today," said Instructor Sarax, his glowing eyes sweeping across the students, "you will face teamwork challenges. You must work in pairs to neutralize threats. All systems are stable. No danger beyond the simulation parameters." At first, everything seemed normal. The students moved carefully through the mock environment. Rock formations, small canyons, and scattered obstacles. Rakar glanced at Elias. "Ready for another hunt?" he asked. Elias smiled faintly. "Always." Suddenly a sharp alarm sounded. Red lights flashed across the dome. The voice of Sarax came over the speakers, but it was strained. "Attention. Containment breach. Rogue combat drone detected. All students follow emergency protocols." Chaos erupted instantly. Students ran in every direction, unsure of what was happening. The breach had released a military-grade training drone, far larger and faster than any they had faced before. Its sensors were designed to detect heat, sound, and movement, and its programming made it extremely aggressive. Rakar growled, instinct taking over. He leaped over rocks and debris, trying to intercept the drone. It fired small, non-lethal energy blasts, narrowly missing him and embedding scorch marks in the nearby walls. Other students panicked, some freezing in place, others scrambling for cover. Elias scanned the situation calmly, his mind racing. Unlike the others, he did not run blindly. He assessed the drone's movements, noting the patterns in its attacks. His survival instincts, honed on Earth, a planet that never allowed mistakes, kicked in immediately. "Rakar," Elias shouted. "Move left. It predicts forward motion." Rakar obeyed, leaping aside as the drone turned, firing at the new position. Elias grabbed a long metal rod from the ground and pulled out a power cell from his pack. He began improvising. The other students looked on in amazement. Many had no idea what he was doing. "What is he planning?" whispered a small Valoran student, eyes wide. "Humans," another whispered, "always have a plan." Elias worked fast. He tied the power cell to the metal rod using a vine-like cord. Sparks flew as he tested the connection. His heart raced, but his hands moved with perfect precision. The rogue drone fired again, targeting the students now clustered near a simulated cliff. Rakar charged forward, but one energy blast sent him tumbling backward. Elias shouted instructions. "Duck behind that wall. Use the reflection." He threw the metal rod toward the wall, connecting the circuit with the drone's movement. When the drone's sensors hit the reflected energy, it overloaded and shut down partially, moving slower and less accurately. Rakar blinked, impressed. "By the stars."
He's controlling it.
Elias's calmness did not falter. "We only need one chance," he said, crouching low and watching for the drone's next move. The rogue drone recovered partially, spinning faster and scanning again. Students screamed and ran in panic, some tripping over debris. Elias saw an opening. He baited the drone toward a narrow canyon. Using a technique he had learned from his survival training on Earth, he ran ahead, using the drone's sensors against itself. He placed small debris and mirrors to confuse its targeting system. The drone fired, but its beams were misdirected. It slammed into a wall of rock, stumbling briefly. Rakar roared and leaped, striking the drone's weak points with precision, forcing it further into a corner. Finally, Elias and Rakar together executed a perfect maneuver. Elias jammed the power cell into the drone's exposed circuitry, while Rakar held it steady. Sparks flew, smoke filled the canyon, and the drone finally fell silent. When the smoke cleared, silence descended. Students slowly emerged from their hiding spots, staring in awe at the two who had faced the rogue drone together. Rakar's chest heaved, sweat dripping from his bronze-scaled body. He looked at Elias, eyes wide. I have never seen anyone do that. You fought without fear, without weapons. You thought faster than any drone." Elias wiped sweat from his brow, smiling faintly. "Back home, that's just survival. We don't always fight with strength. We fight with everything around us." Several students approached them, voices trembling. That was amazing. "Did you see what he did?" Another said. "He saved all of us." Rakar nodded slowly. "Humans, they are not prey. They are something else entirely." Professor Alveth and Instructor Sarax entered the dome after the emergency system stabilized. They surveyed the scene, burn marks, scattered debris, and the fallen drone. "Remarkable," Sarax said, his glowing eyes focused on Elias. The human cadet demonstrated both creativity and courage. "I've never witnessed such control under pressure." Alveth nodded. "This is exactly why humans are called Deathworlders. They face constant danger on their home planet. Adaptation, improvisation, calm under threat, these are traits other species rarely possess." She walked toward Elias. "You have changed the entire class's understanding of survival." Elias shrugged quietly. "I just did what anyone trained on a dangerous world would do." Rakar looked at him, a grin slowly spreading across his face. "I thought I was the hunter. Today I learned I have much to learn from you." That night the academy was still buzzing. The students could not stop talking about the events in the dome. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, and now everyone knew. They were capable of things beyond instinct or muscle. Rakar sat in the dormitory garden, looking at the stars with Elias beside him. The events of the day had left an impression deeper than any jungle, faster than any chase. "You're unusual," Rakar said. "I've hunted the deadliest beasts on Greltor, and yet, today I felt small." Elias smiled faintly. "Danger teaches humility. That's how my world trains us," Rakar nodded thoughtfully. "I want to learn that from you. Not just your speed or your traps. Your mind." Elias looked at him. "Then you will learn. But you must leave pride behind." The next morning, the Academy received reports from all classes. Class 9A's crisis had set a new standard. The human cadet Elias was praised, not only for his calmness under danger, but also for his ingenuity and leadership. Students who had doubted humans now whispered about their Deathworlder instincts. Even Rakar's fellow hunters were reconsidering what strength really meant, Professor. Alveth recorded her observations in the Academy archives. Cadet Elias Ward has demonstrated qualities that surpass physical strength. The combination of mental acuity, calm under pressure, and adaptive strategy is unmatched. It is clear that humans, despite their fragile appearance, are among the galaxy's most resilient species. She paused, smiling faintly as she added, "The galaxy will have to reconsider its assumptions about Deathworlders. They are not to be underestimated." By the end of the day, the students had recovered from the chaos. Rakar approached Elias one last time. "Hunter to human," he said, placing a clawed hand over his chest. "Today you taught me more than any lesson or simulation could." "Thank you." Elias shook his head. "You taught me too. Strength matters, but knowing when to use it and how to survive, that is everything." The two shared a silent understanding. From that day forward, Rakar and Elias became not just classmates but allies. The hunter had learned humility, and the Deathworlder had earned respect beyond anything words could describe. In the Galactic Alliance Academy, whispers of the human cadet spread. The stories of his calm bravery, clever thinking, and ability to survive the impossible became legend. The galaxy had seen humans before, but never like this. And as Elias looked out at the stars that evening, he knew the real challenges were just beginning. The survival instincts that had saved the Academy today were only the first step. The next trials would push them even further, but for now, humans were no longer underestimated. They were no longer just a curiosity from a death world. They were something far more remarkable. By the end of the semester, Class 9A had changed. What began as ordinary lessons in the Galactic Alliance Academy had transformed into stories that would ripple through the galaxy. And at the center of those stories stood one figure, Cadet Elias Ward, the human from Earth, the Deathworlder who had shocked everyone. The weeks following the rogue drone crisis were filled with rigorous training, survival simulations, and strategy exercises. Every test seemed designed to push the limits of the students. Yet Elias moved through them with a calm that unnerved even the most confident species. Rakar, the Graltor hunter, often accompanied him, learning from every step. "You humans, you survive by thinking differently," Rakar said during a climbing exercise. "On my world, we depend on strength. You depend on something else. You see what the environment wants and respond." Elias shrugged. "We learn early that brute force only works so long. The world teaches lessons if you listen." Other students began noticing. Valine, the winged Valoran cadet, whispered to a friend as Elias passed by. "I don't know what's in him, but he's unstoppable." The reputation of the human Deathworlder was growing fast. One morning, Professor Alveth called the class to the main observation chamber. The students entered, curious. Alveth's crystal-like face was unreadable, but her eyes sparkled faintly. "I have an announcement," she said. "Cadet Elias Ward has completed every survival test with ingenuity, bravery, and adaptability that surpasses all expectations. The records show that no species in the Academy's history has demonstrated this level of skill, in both intelligence and endurance simultaneously." A hush fell over the room. The students stared at Elias, some in awe, some in disbelief. Riker stepped forward, his voice deep and proud. "He is not just a survivor. He is a teacher for all of us. I have learned more from him than from any Graltor hunter in years." Elias smiled faintly, keeping his humility. "We all learn from each other," he said. "Strength comes in many forms." As word spread, students from other classes began seeking Elias for advice. They wanted to understand his strategies, how he thought, and how he adapted to challenges. During a training session in the Advanced Simulation Hall, Elias demonstrated a technique to outsmart predator drones without fighting them directly. He used reflective surfaces, sound diversions, and makeshift traps to mislead the machines. The other students were amazed. One young hunter from planet Lornak, who had always prided himself on brute force, said quietly to his partner, "He makes us look weak. Not because he's stronger, but because he thinks differently." Elias explained calmly, "You don't always need to fight. Sometimes you survive by understanding, by patience, by seeing what others don't. Even Rakar found himself nodding. The human cadet was teaching him a kind of hunting he had never imagined. The final test of the semester was announced, the Ultimate Survival Challenge. The students were sent to a massive simulation zone, a planet-sized holographic terrain filled with forests, mountains, rivers, and deserts. It was designed to test every skill: endurance, strategy, observation, and adaptability. The objective was simple: survive and return to the base within 24 hours. But the challenge was deadly in its realism. On the first day of the challenge, chaos erupted immediately. Simulated predators attacked, weather systems changed unpredictably, and the terrain tested every ability the cadets had learned. Many students struggled. Some turned back early. Some became lost in the dense forests, but Elias moved forward with calm precision. Every step he took was measured. Every decision accounted for the environment. He marked paths with small, subtle signs, set traps to divert predators, and even rescued a young cadet from a simulated cliff fall. Rakar followed, sometimes challenged, sometimes learning. "You think faster than the terrain changes," he said once, panting. "Even my instincts are hard-pressed to keep up." Elias shook his head. "It's not about rushing. It's about seeing the patterns. The world tells you what to do if you pay attention." By the second day, the other cadets were struggling to survive. Exhaustion was setting in. Hunger, simulated fatigue, and stress caused mistakes. Elias remained steady. He found water, improvised shelter, and even guided other students who were in trouble. His actions earned him respect, but also quiet admiration. When a group of Valorans tried to confront a mechanical predator directly, Elias calmly said, "Stop. You'll trigger the others. Follow me instead." He led them along a hidden path, diverting the predator into a trap he had set earlier. They emerged unscathed. Afterward, one of the Valorans whispered, "I don't understand. He isn't the strongest, but he survived where all of us almost failed." On the third day, the instructors simulated a natural disaster, a sudden violent storm across part of the terrain. Trees fell, rivers flooded, and visibility dropped to nearly zero. Panic spread among the students. Rakar gritted his teeth as he fought through the wind. "This is impossible for anyone," he shouted. Elias remained calm. He found higher ground and assessed the situation. Then he guided groups of students to safe areas using signals and hand signs. When the storm passed, Elias had not only survived but had helped others survive as well. Professor Alveth's voice came over the academy channels. "Cadet Ward, your actions are exemplary. Not only have you proven your own resilience, but you have demonstrated leadership, foresight, and ingenuity." Rakar looked at him in quiet awe. "I thought humans were fragile," he admitted. "I was wrong. They are remarkable." By the end of the 24-hour challenge, every student had returned to base. Exhausted, muddy, and battered, they gathered for evaluation. Alveth stepped forward. "This semester has been extraordinary. But one cadet stands out not for strength alone, but for the qualities that truly define survival: intelligence, patience, adaptability, and leadership." She paused, smiling. "Cadet Elias Ward, the human from Earth, has earned the title of legendary Deathworlder." The room erupted in applause. Students cheered. Even Rakar's roar of approval shook the hall. Elias simply bowed his head, keeping his humility. "Thank you," he said softly. "I only did what any human would do in a dangerous place." The story of Elias's exploits spread quickly across the academy. He became a mentor, a figure that other cadets turned to for advice and a symbol of what humans could achieve. Rakar, once the proud hunter of Graltor, now followed Elias's lead in many exercises. Together they became an unstoppable team, blending instinct and intellect. One evening, as the academy quieted down, the two sat on a balcony overlooking the stars. Rakar spoke first. "I once thought strength alone defined a hunter. Today I know better. You've shown me the mind can surpass raw power." Elias smiled faintly. "Strength matters, but understanding matters more. The galaxy has a lot to learn from humans." They sat in silence, watching the stars. The bond between them had grown beyond simple friendship. It was mutual respect between a predator and a human survivor. News of Elias's accomplishments reached other parts of the galaxy. Messages came from faraway academies, researchers, and planetary governors, all curious about the human Deathworlder who had survived challenges no other species had. Alveth's final report summarized the impact. Cadet Elias Ward has changed perceptions of humans across the Academy. He demonstrates qualities rarely seen in other species: adaptability, patience, calm under threat, and the ability to lead. Humans are not merely survivors, they are exceptional. The galaxy must take note. The title Deathworlder was no longer whispered with doubt. It became a symbol of respect, courage, and adaptability. As the semester ended, the students gathered for the final ceremony. The awards were given, and while many species celebrated their physical strength or academic achievements, everyone knew who the real star of the class was. When Elias stepped forward to receive his recognition, the entire auditorium erupted. Students from all species cheered, and Rakar's roar of approval echoed above them all. Elias accepted the honor humbly. "I don't do this alone," he said. "The world teaches us and we survive by learning from it. I hope my experiences inspire others to think, adapt, and endure." The crowd erupted again. The galaxy had witnessed something remarkable. A human who was not just strong or brave, but truly extraordinary. That night, as the Academy quieted down, Elias looked up at the stars from the balcony. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, dangers, and mysteries. But he smiled, knowing one thing: humans were no longer underestimated. They were respected, feared by some, admired by many, and above all, capable of surviving anywhere the universe could.